And good morning, I'm Jeff Stauffer, and thanks for joining us today for the Elville webinar series. It's Friday, April 24th, and our topic today is Planning with Intention, the estate planning process that endures. And there's no one better to take us through this discussion than our managing principal and lead attorney, Stephen Elville. How are you today, Steve?
Good morning, Jeff. I couldn't be better on this beautiful morning. Thank you.
Good. So this is our second webinar with the new GoToWebinar experience. We'll be learning a bit together. A few housekeeping items. We encourage your questions throughout, so please note them in the questions panel and we'll pause periodically. And yesterday by email, you received the presentation slides Steve is going to be referencing, and they're also available in the section marked handouts to download at this time. And you'll also receive a post-webinar feedback email right after the presentation. Please take just a few minutes to fill out this brief but very important survey to share your feedback about today's presentation. And as always, a question for you. Have you achieved your planning goals, or have those goals shifted since you last looked at your planning? Here at Elville & Associates, we're a leading resource for your family's needs. And whatever that might be, if you're starting from the beginning, if you have older documents that need to be reviewed, an administration matter, or something completely different, Steve and his team are here to meet with you to answer your specific questions, understand your goals, and offer a path forward for you, which is very important. So we'll move through a brief introduction and then we will jump right in. So you should be able to see my screen here, which I'm going to start. There we go. So we're Elville & Associates, estate planning, elder law, special needs planning, and much more, based here in Maryland. We've been around since 2010 with offices in Columbia, which Steve and I are coming to you from today, Rockville, and Annapolis. We have a team of attorneys and staff that are focused on helping families plan, protect, and navigate life's transitions. And our work spans estate planning, elder law, long-term care planning, trust and estate administration, special needs planning, and more. But I think what really sets us apart is how we approach that work. And we're very focused on education and guidance and legal counsel, not just documents, which people get bogged down in sometimes. We want our clients to really understand their options, be confident in your decisions, and have a plan that works over time and time again. And that's why we do a lot of webinars like this, why we built an ongoing client care program to support families well beyond the initial planning process. And at the end of the day, I think our goal is very simple. It's to provide practical solutions and thoughtful solutions and give clients real peace of mind along the way. Just a bit about Steve as well. Leading the effort is Steve Elville, our managing principal and lead attorney. Steve's been practicing for over 25 years, focusing on estate planning, elder law, special needs planning, and a strong emphasis in tax planning and asset protection techniques. He's very involved in many national organizations in these areas, and that helps him keep our firm at the forefront of best practices and strategies, which relay over to client information. He's also a very experienced educator and speaker. You'll see that today, regularly offering presentations and workshops, conferences, continuing education events, and much more. Steve's also been recognized by Maryland's super lawyers for over a decade, and beyond his legal work, he's also the founder of the Elville Center for the Creative Arts, which is our firm's charity he founded in 2014. I'm very fortunate to be part of that. We just had our third board meeting of the year to understand ways that we can further impact the communities that we serve. The critical need for music education in schools and other organizations. It's a challenging situation. We want to be part of the solution. I'm looking in my office right now. I have, I'd say, about 8 guitars. I have a huge standing bass that's about 6 feet tall. We got donated yesterday. Several keyboards, some cymbals, a hi-hat, and much more. We talk about it all day. If you want to learn how you can support the Elville Center, including being a volunteer to further our important work, please reach out to me directly. I would love to share our story with you a little bit more. So Steve, I'm going to go ahead and get the presentation going here.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. And I understand you're going to be controlling the slides today.
I will be, yes, I will.
Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone, on this beautiful Friday morning here in Maryland, if you're in Maryland. And just a couple of words about Jeff. Jeff personifies the excellence that we always strive for here at Elville & Associates with our staff and attorneys. And Jeff, can you just describe recently how you delivered a very high-end instrument to the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra?
Oh, yeah, sure. We've had a good relationship with the Annapolis Symphony for many years. One of our donors wanted to honor a family member that was playing this instrument. It was a Yanagisawa tenor saxophone. It's about a $10,000 instrument. And I met with the concert master of the Annapolis Symphony. His name's Natty Drablatt, and their new executive director, to donate that instrument to the Annapolis Symphony Academy, which is the organization that provides free instruction and concerts for kids that have a lot of music potential, but they can't afford to follow through it on their own. So we donated that instrument. I had further conversations about the charity supporting the Annapolis Symphony's family concert series, which we're going to be doing going into the summer and fall and beyond. So real privileged to be a part of the Elville Center and all the work that we do, along with our work here at Elville Associates.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for that. Every person has a story, and every instrument apparently has a story.
Definitely.
So thank you very much. And again, good morning to everyone. I know your time is valuable here on a Friday morning, so we've begun on time and we're going to end on time. And again, I thank all the clients, past clients, new potential clients, financial advisors, CPAs, life insurance specialists, anyone who is part of our collaborative network. Thank you for attending this morning. And we're going to have a conversation today. And I want you to relax, grab another cup of coffee if you haven't had too much already, or whatever your favorite drink is. And also, get a pad of paper, get a tablet out, get your laptop out, whatever it is that you get comfortable in that situation to make notes. Take away something substantive from today's discussion, which is about really being intentional with your estate planning and planning with intention. And we're going to be talking about high-level concepts. Most of this presentation is basically non-technicals. A lot of times we do technical type attorney training or financial advisor type training for legal issues or client education that is more technical in nature. Today's discussion is more non-technical. So I just invite you to relax and realize that this is not really legal advice, right? Because we can't enter into an attorney-client relationship here over the Zoom in today's workshop. This is really just education. So get comfortable. Realize that Jeff, who I'm going to talk about again, is an expert moderator. We've literally done thousands of webinars together. Jeff knows how to field your questions, find out if you have any concerns. If you have any technical problems, please let him know. But obviously, you can communicate, and this is an informal presentation in the sense that you can ask questions. So we're going to get into a discussion about being intentional, but I also want to say at the outset that many of you are, concerned about being perfect. So let's talk about intentionalism, or being intentional versus trying to be perfect, or trying to focus on perfection. So I'll just say, if this will make any sense at the outset, that in my experience with thousands of clients and family members and fiduciaries over the years and working with professionals, clients are very concerned when they get to the point of actually doing their planning, of course. And those people who do planning, and I'm going to give you a lot of credit here for being on this webinar on a Friday morning when you could be doing other things, and you're talking about estate planning on a Friday morning. Remember that you need to give yourself permission. You need to give yourself a lot of credit and a lot of permission that your planning will not necessarily ever be perfect, so to speak, but it will be as perfect as you can make it today. So if you were to do and carry out some of the concepts we're going to talk about today, such as maintaining your estate plan and understanding the scope and nature of how estate planning works, you're doing your very best. The mere fact that you are on this webinar this morning speaks volumes about you and your idea about trying to be intentional and trying to achieve perfection. You may never achieve perfection. None of us may ever achieve perfection. But just again, remember, when you do estate planning in mind, with these concepts, I should say, in mind that we're going to talk about, you are achieving perfection. You're achieving perfection to make your estate plan as good as it possibly can be today or tomorrow or whenever you update your estate plan. And you're being very intentional about that by the mere fact that you're working towards a goal with the idea that this is an important thing. This is a priority thing to be focusing on at a certain point in your life for your lifetime incapacity planning, for your death type planning, for whatever your goal may be. So give yourself a lot of credit. Most people in this country do not do estate planning, and even fewer people who do planning keep their planning really updated the way it should be. So just give yourself a lot of credit, take off a lot of pressure from the very get go of this discussion, and give yourself a lot of permission to say, I'm going to, when I engage in my estate planning, achieve the perfection that I'm looking for in that very moment based on what I know today, and then I'll continue to achieve as much perfection as I possibly can in the future with my future updates. Okay, so let's get into part one of the presentation as we talk about being intentional in the process. And the first concept is that documents do not represent an estate plan. So Jeff, let's go to the next slide. And we're going to really start talking about this concept that a lot of people feel if they have a set of documents that they have an estate plan. And in a sense, that is true, right? It's hard to have probably a good estate plan without any documents or without documents that are substantive. So most people think they have an estate plan when they have a will or a revocable trust, which are foundational documents for what happens at my death. And the revocable trust has some elements of lifetime planning also, but throw in there some powers of attorney for financial management, advanced medical directives, and throw in there some beneficiary designations, and most people think that's their estate plan. But in the meantime, we all know that life is continuing, right? Life is really kind of amazing, as at least at my age, to sit and look at what is happening in the world, what's happening with my grandkids, what's happening with my children, their careers, their challenges, their lives, their achievements, the hills and valleys versus the mountains that they have to climb. There's just so much going on, and it's hard to fathom how in the world we would keep up with it. I met with a very successful CPA this morning, and he was just telling me about tax season that they just got done with and all the changes and all how difficult it is to get through tax season these days. So an estate plan is more than a set of documents because what the estate plan many times lacks, okay, it lacks coordination among a team of advisors. So you may want to consider to have an advisory team. The alignment of assets with the documents. So in other words, you can have great documents, but not have your assets aligned properly. And now something changes in a family member's life, but your documents and your alignment of assets are contrary to maybe what you're subconsciously thinking should happen for that person. Um, your long-term process maybe does not exist. You may be looking at the estate plan as a transaction, which is how a lot of estate plans are delivered. I don't want to use the word sold, but there's a lot of seminar selling of estate plans. There's a lot of online selling of estate plans. If you kind of do that, that doesn't mean it's a terrible situation. It just means you don't have a process. You just have a transaction. There has to be a structured process for updating, right? If you're going to maintain your estate plan or your tax plan or your financial advisory plan or your health plan, whatever plan it may be, we want to have a process for review and updating and a strategy, basically. Okay. So again, the theme here, and thank you, Jeff, for laying it out here. Having documents, here they are, is not the same as having a functional estate plan that's intentional, right? Because as we get into the next slide and the several slides after that, we really don't want to end up with an unintentional estate plan, as crazy as that sounds. And many people have an unintentional estate plan. We're going to get to that. Now, estate planning becomes transactional, okay? And we're being redundant here, becomes transactional when the attorney involved makes it transactional. So we have to be careful about that. The process is kind of transactional. The drafts are quick. There's a quick signing, okay? We just throw it in a drawer, throw it in a safe deposit box, or upload it in a cloud environment and forget about it, okay? That, that's life. That we all have things to do. We have more things to do. I spoke to someone yesterday who has just retired 3 months ago, and I asked him how it was going, and he was being a bit facetious, but he said it wasn't going that great because he was so much busier than he was before, and he missed work, a little bit. So, in other words, life takes over. So, intentional planning, okay, defined goals. What is your goal? Do you have a goal for your estate planning? All estate planning, all elder law planning, all special needs planning, all tax planning. It really should be goal driven. This morning at our charity meeting we had here for the Elville Center, we were talking about our strategic plan and the need for our firm, our charity to have defined goals and to continue to refine those goals. The same thing is true for your estate plan. Design structure, okay? Has there been a good conversation about that, and do you understand it? Okay. Many times estate planning is delivered in a paternalistic way. Here's your documents. I, attorney, know what's best for you. Literally, this does happen. You need to understand those documents, and you have to have a foundational understanding of things. Coordination with the advisors, as I mentioned, the alignment of assets with the plan. In a will-based plan, there's 2 steps. Most people don't realize that. Create the will, have it set forth the elements of the will, and then we have what? Beneficiary designations that drive those IRAs and life insurance and 401ks and so forth. In a revocable trust plan, we have two steps. Create the trust and let it set forth the estate plan. And then the alignment of assets, the retitling of assets, the assignment of assets, and so forth. The education of fiduciaries. I met with a family yesterday that can't wait to bring their son back, who is going to be their trusted fiduciary, because they have some specific circumstances in their family that he's going to need to know how to handle those things. Even if you don't have any esoteric or specific worries, there's a very, very a strong recommendation coming from the whole advisory team to bring your fiduciaries in to sit and learn. And of course, if they're willing to do that, they're very special people. But the education of your fiduciaries now and over time with review is really what we're looking for. So Jeff has said here in the red, bolded, without an intentional process, planning becomes outdated over time. It'll decay very quietly, like many things we deal with in life, whether that is maintenance on a vehicle, maintenance for our health, whatever it may be. So I don't know if I coined this phrase, but I came up with a phrase a few years ago where I said, this idea of someone being, serious about their estate planning, but remember, we need to drop the idea of perfection, serious but without perfection. That's being intentional, in my opinion. So what is intentionalism? Okay, if you want to coin that phrase for yourself. Let's go forward, Jeff. Well, it's the deliberate and conscious process that we are going to be engaged in. Now, you've got to be guided by a structured process, but how do you do that if your attorney or your law firm is not providing that? You have to have a path forward, I like to say. So you could create your own process, but as a client or potential client, that's really the burden of the law firm, to create a guided process that's anchored to defined goals, okay, and it's coordinated across legal, financial, and tax domains. And I thought that's a great way to put that in this presentation. And it's adaptable over time. So being intentional, obviously, we could go to Webster's or other dictionaries and look that up. But this is, I think, a very good idea of what it means. You're being intentional, which is the opposite of allowing random events to occur. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So unintentional planning is reacting under crisis situations, reacting when it's too late and having to pick up the pieces. It's fragmented. It's only document driven. And then all of a sudden at a time of crisis, we look at those documents and we hope for the best, right? Well, that's leaving things to chance. And clearly, with an estate plan being, in my opinion, one of the most personal things for you to set forth your vision, and I'm getting pretty deep here now, your vision of self-determination, whatever that is. Self-determination at your passing, self-determination during life, self-determination of your goals and values. We don't want to leave that to chance. So intentionalism replaces randomness as a disciplined approach. Thank you very much for bolding that red there, Jeff. Let's go to the next slide. And here Jeff says in our presentation, what are the two requirements for an intentional estate plan? And again, opinions may vary. This is just my opinion. Okay. Well, client commitment on your part. Well, I've already given you a lot of congratulations and kudos this morning for being here on a Friday morning when you could be doing anything. So your willingness, a client's willingness to engage deeply in the plan. Now, sometimes this can go too far and people become very anxiety ridden. And this is why I'm trying to give you permission to release yourself from the idea of perfection and worry about that. Okay, you can only plan for what you know today. Willingness to come back and revisit in the future. We're very fortunate and blessed to have a client care program. I think we have one of the only client care programs in Maryland, and we just have a lot of fun. But the main purpose of the client care program is to what? Encourage people to update their plans, and then I guess secondarily to have fun and also bring their children and fiduciaries to be able to learn. So this is what we're all about, to stay updated with the laws and the changes. And accepting the idea that estate planning is a process that should be engaged in over a lifetime and not just one time. Now, the second requirement is participating in an organized process, and we just talked about this. This can't happen unless you are a client, let's say, of a firm that has an organized process, integrating with an advisory team. Now, does every client, does every person have a financial advisor, a CPA, and a life insurance specialist, and an aging life care manager as we get older, or other professionals? No, there are people who do their own investments and have done fairly well and very well. There are people who haven't really formed this advisory team. But again, generally speaking, this is going to be part of the organized process. Okay. It's a structured process through maintenance and review, whether that's with a client care program or whether it's just on your own initiative. And it's, of course, supported by education. And so excellence is not likely unless we have these two elements. Go ahead, Jeff, and let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about, again, more of the non-technical. And I appreciate your patience as we really just talk about things that we don't really think about most of the time, but somewhere is hidden in the back of our minds. We're going to talk about randomness versus structure. Some of this is obvious, and I apologize if it is. Let's go to the next slide, Jeff. So here is an unintentional plan, okay? No fault of your own, no fault of a person, okay, who is living their life, being successful or dealing with life's challenges, whatever's happening, okay? I need a will. I need documents, okay? And so documents are drafted. There's not a lot of review. Some of us, when we came up in law, this is how we were trained. There's not a lot of emphasis on incapacity planning. For example, just in my own experience, many of you who have attended our webinars know that, and in your own lives, you know that there are people that are quite healthy at age 90, 95. I've had a couple of clients live beyond 103. So now we haven't really focused on one of the most important things, which is incapacity planning. No funding and alignment of assets. So we have a plan. It says this and this and this, but assets are flowing in a random way, and there's been no thought and no coordination there. There's been no consideration of asset protection or passing along goals and values or making sure money gets from point A to point B, or how should the investments be distributed. There's no review, there's no advisory coordination, and after that transaction is over, there's no further contact. So this is where it kind of begins, the unintentional plan. Let's go, Jeff, to the next page. And so this is where we have the possibility of a kind of a collapse over time. So the planning collapses because it lacks structured process, all the things we've talked about so far, clear goals. Okay. So I think over the years, and as you know, politics change, tax laws change, healthcare changes, our lives, state law changes. There's legislative update that we're getting ready to hear on Monday from the Maryland legislature, the results of the legislative session. All of these things are constantly happening. Okay. So failure doesn't appear until later, most of the time, right? There's a big administrative burden on somebody. There's confusion in the family, or there's a loss of tax advantages that could have been obtained. There's a lack of flexibility where we really were depending on flexibility. If there's one thing that we want to preserve in planning, depending on a person's situation, of course, or a couple, is flexibility. But if we don't have good planning, we lose flexibility, and that's not good. And then there's a possibility of conflict, which, of course, hopefully will not be the case in your family. But many of these things just kind of creep up, and they are preventable. So this is really what we want to bear in mind. All right, so estate planning is really what? Managing these things. And let's go into the risk management part of the presentation. So estate planning manages what? Incapacity risk. We just talked about this. Um, if you were to go to some of the large national conferences that people like me are lucky to attend, what we find out is, what is the most important document in estate planning? Well, if you didn't already guess, it's a financial power of attorney. So we have incapacity risk. At a time of incapacity, have we articulated the kind of flexibility for tax planning, Medicaid planning, compensation of the fiduciaries, gifting, all of these things? Have we articulated that to try to minimize our risk? Okay. Mortality risk, right? None of us know how long we are going to live. Many of us are depending on leaving assets to our family members based on what we have now. We don't really know, though. We don't really know, do we, how much money we're going to have at our deaths. So it's looking at risk from all kinds of different angles, which is why most people plan with a will or a revocable trust as their foundational plan. Of course, there's many other advanced planning structures, but these documents tend to, in today's world, manage risk. They tend to provide lots of different options depending on what is actually happening at our deaths and during life, having a robust set of advanced directives and powers of attorney that articulate in a weird kind of way, in a counterintuitive kind of way, what your goals are that would be still achievable if you could not do it yourself. So there's tax risks. And of course, we're living in an environment where we can leave very large amounts of money to our loved ones without state or federal tax. But some of you are still in this category where you're going to be facing a state tax situation, a federal estate tax situation. So these are risks that need to be addressed in the planning. Long-term care, we talked about Medicaid related planning. Maryland continues to be one of the, well, I should say, less desirable places to live, if not one of the least desirable places to live for long-term care planning in the future, where we want to have more options available to the residents or citizens of Maryland. But yet our legislature has not seen fit to provide more slots, such as Delaware and New York and other places, for what are called waiver programs. So there are risks about, how much money will we have? Do we have long-term care planning? Do we have enough assets to pay privately? For those of you who do special needs planning for your special needs loved one, there are risks about how much money will be there or the quality of programs for people with disabilities in the future. Family dynamics, and of course, we just mentioned the legislature and legislative change. Hopefully in Maryland, and what I just described, in the environment of aging in place, hopefully we're going to have positive legislative change in the future there. So risks cannot be eliminated completely, but they can be managed and it can be structured over time through consistency. Let's go to the next slide, Jeff. So further risks, let's just go over these briefly. Uh, Structural risks in documents, weak or outdated documents. I met with a wonderful family yesterday through no fault of their own. They had done wonderful estate planning 20 to 25 years ago. They came in to update their documents, and it was really a stark reminder that back then these documents were considered to be high quality documents, and inherently there was nothing wrong with them, so to speak. But today's world, our documents would be considered to be so much more comprehensive and providing for so many more backup provisions and addressing so many more issues than the style of drafting back then. So weak or outdated documents, having attorneys using documents that they inherited from their prior firms 20 years ago, this kind of thing actually happens. Having inflexible trust provisions, improper titling, inadequate long-term care. So we're kind of repeating different things, same things in a different way. Okay. Professional risks, transactional drafting, where again, like I mentioned, certain law firms having certain practices where documents are just rubber stamped and they're not customized. Um, Really, using an attorney who is doing general planning. I have a friend from out of state who had just sent me a will to review, and she was concerned that she had inadvertently gone to a general practitioner and had used, that practitioner wasn't doing anything wrong per se, but his documents that he was using were pretty inadequate, really, compared to what she was used to and probably what she needed. No lack of coordination or a lack of coordination among advisors, and really no protocol for review, no process. And of course, personal risks. This is something that we all are dealing with here is having undefined goals, avoiding conversations that are difficult, not communicating with family and extended family for some of you, where extended family members may need to coordinate things for children and grandchildren or special needs beneficiaries. And of course, failure to update. These are just the further risks. So even with strong documents, okay, they can fail over time. And that was really that story I relayed from the documents that are 20 to 25 years old. Nothing wrong with them per se, except the passage of time, changes in the laws. So for example, in this particular case, changes in the laws in 2010 in Maryland, 2014, and then beyond up to now where we are in 2026. All right, Jeff. So risk affects everything in estate planning. Asset protection, if that's a goal, tax efficiency, if that's a goal, elder care strategies, how does that all fit in? Well, it can be built in. There may be a need to have specific consultations about elder care strategies or special needs planning, but generally a lot of backup can be built in, and this is part of goal-based planning upfront as well. Healthcare decision-making authority. This is a very important thing that a lot of people don't think about. How much power does my healthcare agent have? Well, I can tell you they have a lot of power, and they need to know how to wield that power at a time of crisis, at a time of a questionable discharge from a hospital, at a time of care not being adequate in a facility, and the healthcare agent has to become a strong advocate. So these things are important for your fiduciaries to understand. Speaking of fiduciaries, selection of fiduciaries, nothing more could be more important. Structuring them, having people you can rely on, and revisiting those people over time. Digital assets. We're going to be talking about digital assets in a big way in our client event upcoming this fall. But digital assets, most of you have more digital assets than you've ever had. Whether you own crypto or not, you still have digital assets, and understanding how that is dealt with. Flexibility and amendment authority. That's one of the flexibilities, is the power to be able to amend. Now we have non-judicial settlement agreements, we have decanting. And so part of education is understanding these things, and that estate planning is, as Jeff has said here, not only multi-dimensional, but estate planning is multi-jurisdictional. as many of our client care program members know. All right, let's go to the next slide. So goals and values and motivation. I know that people that are on this webinar this morning, whether you've had more than one cup of coffee or not, I know you've got all those things, or you wouldn't be here. So again, kudos to you. All estate planning, as I mentioned earlier, is goal driven. GOAL, goal driven. Documents help implement goals. Okay. Um, and so you have to be intentional. You have to know what your goal is. So if you don't know what your goal is, that's okay. You may say, well, what is my goal? I don't know at this point. Please know that you can have an epiphany or more than one in the process of counseling to get back to the basics of what your goal really is. Your goal might be protecting spouses and children, protecting vulnerable beneficiaries, managing a situation with a person who has problems that they're dealing with, managing taxes, preserving wealth could be a goal for you, reducing administrative burden and costs of administration, and maintaining family harmony. This is a big goal in today's world, right? We have generational divides, generational differences, family differences, political differences. All of these things are in our world. And on some level, these things coalesce because, as Jeff has so aptly said here, estate planning is ultimately not only goal driven, but it is driven by love. Love of your organization that you love, your family members that you love, the concepts and values that you love. So always remember, even though it's legal technical, even though it's goal driven, it is in essence driven by love on some level. So we want to work with a firm. That's what we're doing here, is trying to educate that is in partnership. Okay, partnership is what's important. If you engage with an attorney and you don't feel you're in partnership, that is not a good situation. So we don't want transactions. We want partnership. We want education that goes beyond documents that are simply drafted and disseminated. We want legal technical that is leading edge. That's a hard thing to pronounce this morning. Leading edge legal and technical solutions. That's for sure. And we want to be on the leading edge, but in common sense and collaboration with your goals and values. Asset alignment and funding and how assets flow in coordination with an estate plan is essential. Structured maintenance and review. Why? Life is crazy. Life gets really crazy. I can't even believe it's 2026. Those of you who are my age or older, you know what I'm talking about. So we have to have structure and, of course, long-term succession in your fiduciaries. So one other thing to remember, don't plan in isolation, because if you come out of isolation, so to speak, and you make this regular, you make it a maintaining kind of process, you will do one specific thing that I know will resonate with many of you. You will be able to revisit who your fiduciaries are, who your trusted fiduciaries are that you've named, personal representatives, trust protectors, special fiduciaries like trust advisors or investment advisors if you have that kind of planning, agents under powers of attorney, agents under advanced medical directives. You'll be able to address these things on a continuous, systematic basis, and that will take away a lot of the worry that you have about how am I going to make sure that this plan works long term. You will be doing everything you can possibly do. And I'll leave one other thought here, and our client care program members know this. When you make yourself knowledgeable about the multi-jurisdictional opportunities all around us in the world today, and the advantages of certain techniques, or in this state, there's advantages, in this state, there might be certain advantages. What if my children or nieces and nephews or grandchildren live in this particular state? What could be done if they live there someday after my death? All of these things, okay, all of these things can be addressed with continuous maintenance and updating. It is not just to make sure that the documents are correct. It's to make sure that you have a perspective on what's happening in the world and you're not in isolation about your own estate planning. And this will give peace of mind. All right, Jeff, the advisory team, let's talk about that a little bit. We talked about this a little earlier. Estate planning is usually a coordinated discipline. I remember when I first started in the practice of law, there wasn't so much of this collaborative environment that we have today. But one thing I learned years ago from other very leading edge practitioners is that this is where the rubber meets the road. Clients need the advice and the knowledge of several advisors, not just one person. No advisor in today's world would know all the answers. None of those advisors would be able to solely advise about every single aspect of a person's estate plan in a 99% of all the cases. So we want an integration of the legal, tax, investment strategy, insurance structure, retirement planning. Uncle Sam, and many of you know this, Uncle Sam structured those IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and 457 plans and SEPs, structured those things separately. And so those are separate animals running around over here. And here are your regular, what I would just call your routine assets, your non-retirement assets. These things have different characteristics. They have to be thought about. They have to be reviewed. So no single professional can do it alone. Coordination, in my opinion, and our opinion here at Elville and Associates, is not optional. All right, Jeff. So the functional advisory team really is one where the advisors know one another. They know you, they know your children. I know this is a high bar we're setting. They understand your goals. They participate in the discussions, and they are not in isolation among themselves. So the team has to function as a structured and unified team. And the responsibility really is on your team to serve you, but also you want to make sure that you're making sure that your team is functional. So it again, it's partnership, it's good faith, and it's understanding the difference between people who are planning in this, they're rowing in the same direction for lifetime maintenance and updating and the maintenance and sustaining of the plan over a long time. All right, Jeff. So again, the cost of the team failure is clearly breakdown. One person refuses to cooperate with the other person, which is really a breach. Okay, flexibility is lost, vulnerabilities of beneficiaries are exposed, and so forth. So we don't need to focus too much on this. So the most dangerous scenario is one where the client, you, let's say, are not aware of the dysfunction of your team. So what we want to make sure of is that you have an advisory team, if that is what you want, which is what we recommend, and that advisory team meets on a regular basis. I know it's a high bar, but imagine that there was no meeting among your financial advisors, lawyers, CPAs over a period of years. It's possible that some aspect of your estate plan has a little bit of a missing piece there. So perfection, again, is maintenance and updating and coordination with your advisors, however many they are. Let's go to one of the last slides here, I guess, Jeff, as we're starting to wind up. And I thank everybody for their time and attention. We know what clients want, or at least we believe we do, and you'll decide what it is that you want as a client. Clients want assurance that their plan is going to work as intended, that spouses and children and nieces and nephews and grandchildren and others are going to be protected. Tax risks are managed. Assets are going to endure as intended, okay? Advisors are going to act in the family's best interest, that people's intentions, clients' intentions are going to be honored, okay? And this can be done through memorandums of intent and letters of wishes and other tools that can be used, okay? But this is what we're trying to convey here is that the advisory team should be functioning, and your estate planning firm should be functioning to understand and give you assurance that they understand what you really want. So assurance in the process, considering all of the things that can happen in the world to us, to our children, to our fiduciaries, to our tax structure, everything. Assurance requires structure, not just optimism. Hope is not a strategy. Okay, I think somebody said that one time. Good intentions are not a system, And believing that everything will be fine is not the same thing as this structured maintenance and updating and design that will hold up under stress. Okay. And that gets us back to the idea of all the things we've been talking about are elements of being intentional, or what we would say is intentionalism in estate planning. So, maintenance and endurance. Let's talk about this. Thank you, Jeff. Estate plans can fail and oftentimes do fail without maintenance. Okay. So planning has to adapt to legislative changes. A good example is the Secure Act from 2020 and the Secure 2.0. I believe that was 2022. The spousal elective share in Maryland and modifications, how things work between spousal dispositions now, and what does this new spousal elective share mean? The estate and income tax law evolution, health changes, family transitions, financial and economic disruptions. I'm going to throw out a couple of more things out there. The Supported Decision Making Act, okay, and decanting. All of these things have happened in the law. Most of them are fail-safe mechanisms or further expansions of flexibility. But again, a static plan cannot survive when we are living in a dynamic world where people have dynamic lives. All right, Jeff. So we have to have periodic reviews, ongoing legal education. Again, we talked about this over and over. Fiduciaries, family members, monitoring of changes in the laws, fiduciary education, I just mentioned that, family meetings when appropriate, not just for your lawyers to meet with your family or for you to educate your fiduciaries, but also, again, your advisory team. Continuity planning for future generations. Someone was asking me yesterday or this morning, how is my child going to know how to deal with this trust situation in the future? So it's really making sure people know where resources are, not just the education. So maintenance transforms documents into living systems. I like that, Jeff. And at Elville and Associates, at this particular firm, our philosophy is implemented through this client care program, which again is to encourage maintenance and updating. That's really all it is. And the fact that we actually have fun is a byproduct of that. Let's go to the next slide, Jeff. So partnership and power. Again, the importance of partnership between client and attorney or client and the advisory team does what? Eliminates randomness, replaces a transaction with a process. It requires commitment on both part of the client and the firm, or the client and the team. It extends before, during, and after drafting and design, and it builds long-term confidence for clients and families and fiduciaries. So intentionalism, or being intentional, is sustained through partnership. So an intentional process comes out the other side with an educated client, a coordinated advisory team where appropriate, and in most circumstances we recommend that, and a structured maintenance and updating program, all to say a legacy that endures and actually works. And don't forget the incapacity planning piece, which most of us forget about. But we are important as well during our lives, not just our beneficiaries and our loved ones. We have to take care of ourselves as well. So estate planning done intentionally is not about perfection. That's what I mentioned at the outset. It is about discipline, design, and longevity in the pursuit of perfection, of course, and release yourself from that anxiety. Jeff has put a wonderful quote in here for me to read, and I thank you, Jeff. The best way to predict the future is to create it, I guess said by Peter Drucker. So thank you for that, Jeff. So we at Elville and Associates encourage you here on this Friday morning to revisit your current planning. If you don't have planning, we're here to discuss it with you, help you identify goals, educate you and your loved ones. Set a consultation with us. We do not charge, generally speaking, to review existing documents. If you have existing documents, we want you to have questions for us, so feel free to make a list of questions. There's nothing to fear, because when you meet with an attorney, even if you don't become a client, there is an attorney-client relationship. There's confidentiality that attaches to that meeting. So there's really nothing to fear. as strange as it is to come in and talk to people about your personal issues. Evaluate your current financial advisory team structure. We're happy to help you with that if you have questions. Clarify your goals and priorities. And if you don't know what those are, we're here to help you identify those. Take the time to think. Jeff and I have been saying this. All of our attorneys here at Elville and Associates have been saying this since the beginning of COVID. We all just needed to slow down, maybe despite the tragedy, and think. And we still believe it's time to slow down and think. And that's what we have our facilities for, our equipment, our technical tools here to help you and engage intentionally. So the difference between having documents and having a legacy is intentional design. And thus, we bring up this idea of intentionalism. Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you after I thank everyone for their time and attention on a Friday morning. And I wish everyone a wonderful and happy weekend.
Steve, thank you. This is always one of my favorite presentations. I enjoy listening to it. I'm sure our attendees did as well. Lots of high-level concepts there to contemplate. Usually not many questions with this. People are pensive as they drink their coffee and listen. Do have a comment, so now's a great time for any questions that you might have. There you go, Steve. Any questions, send them over now, please. Our client Ann said, thank you. How many times have I heard, quote, everything will fall into place, or it'll all work out? I appreciate you addressing that. So thanks for that comment, Ann. I always send out the video and the slides and some other information after our webinars, which I'll do today. This time I'll include some information about our client care program, which Steve mentioned several times. It's key to having that intentional planning and a good process in place. We had two workshops in January and April for our client care program members and their families. We really enjoyed ourselves there. We have our social event coming up in either the late summer or early fall, depending on what we do, as well as our client event, which we're really excited about in mid-November. And then we'll have a final client care program quarterly event in December. So I'll send you some information about how to register for our client care program, become a member, along with some other information about it as well. And no other questions. So I hope you all have a wonderful day and a great weekend. And Steve, thanks again for being here today and all you do for the firm and our clients.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, everyone.